Hey guys, welcome to the Source Gaming Discussion. I am your host, Epic Martin 7, and today I am joined by Nantenjex.
Hello.
And today we're going to talk about the future of the Super Smash Bros. Series. So this is going to be an extensively broad topic. The reason why we're covering that right now is because E3 has passed, and as all of us know, there was no Smash Brothers at all. We were all I think we were all anticipating at least to have the game appear in some form. I mean, weren't you anticipating something, Nintendex?
I was thinking it might get a soft confirmation. We are working on this, but we have nothing to show. Kind of like what Metroid Prime 4 got, but for Smash. At least some sort of mentioning that they're working on something Smash related. But because that's what usually happens. Smash usually gets announced at the first E3 of that console's life cycle, but like no footage is shown.
Right.
And then it will get shown off a year later, and then it will come out like a year or two after that.
Yeah, I mean, we got soft confirmations for Metroid Prime 4, which was just a little, CGI trailer. Like, not trailer, it was just the CGI logo. That was it. And then we got, like, a Pokemon confirmation, but there was no footage or, like, name.
Yeah, so something like the Pokemon one is something that I was anticipating. But then, again, Sakurai wasn't there, and he was at the Kirby... he wasn't even at E3 this year, he was at the Kirby concert.
Right.
And I think if he's working on it, he'll probably be the one to announce it. So, soft or not.
Right. And technically speaking, I mean, it was interesting because of course, this is YouTube comments, so take them with a grain of salt. But every time I was watching that stream, all I could see was comments about Smash just flying in there. It was hilarious. I think I was seeing it more than usual. I wasn't just seeing it in YouTube comments. I was seeing it in a bunch of other places. And I think the main question at this point we need to reconsider is it even in development?
I guess we don't have any concrete factual evidence that they're working on a Smash game right now. They generally are. I mean, there are gaps obviously in between the games and stuff, but usually there's at least some kind of team porting over the assets before, like even before Sakurai jumped on Smash 4 to actually work on it properly, even before it was announced, there was a small team porting Brawl over to the 3DS and stuff like that. I mean, I believe that that's the case that's been going on since before. I mean, I'll get what I think out of the way. I think that it was a port originally, along with a bunch of other games like Splatoon and Mario Kart. But as it's taken so long to get out, like how Splatoon they decided we'll just make it a new game, I think with Smash it's kind of done the same thing, where it's gotten to the point where if they release it, they won't release it until, next year at the earliest, maybe not even like November of 2018. And at that point, everyone's just going to wonder why it's not a new game,
right?
Why it's still a port of a 4-year-old game at that point. So,
right,
I think what they decided to do, what Sakurai probably decided to do, was he's working on his current game, which we don't know what it is, but it's, judging by how often Sakurai releases games, probably going to come out either, if it's a smaller project, it'll be the end of this year. If it's a slightly bigger project, it'll be some point next year. And he'll probably start serious development of Smash as soon as that's done. That'll be done. He'll take a month break and he'll start it off. But currently, right now, they're porting over all the stuff from Smash for Wii U and working off of small notes that Sakurai left behind. Like, I think they'd anticipated adding a couple of characters into the game, all the 3DS stages, and they've been working on that. And now they're gonna, treat it as a brand new title. So do the whole project plan again, remove stuff if they have to, and so on.
I completely agree with that statement. I think at some point they were just... I think Splatoon and Smash probably started out as a port at some point, mainly because of how... Well, first of all, if you look at Splatoon 2, just the fact that it's really close to its predecessor's core gameplay, and the fact that some people were questioning whether or not it even looks like a new game, which to me it does, but I think a lot of people were like, okay, there's more Splatoon in it than there should be. And that's actually, I think, part of Nintendo's whole initiative now, where they're trying to speed up development time, which I think is working. quite nicely. I mean, they're making a lot of new assets out of the pre-existing ones. And I think Splatoon 2 is like the first game to really show that off. In general, I think that's going to help Smash Brothers because we're going to see something. I think we're going to see Smash quicker, but that's going to be because it's going to be based off more of the assets of the previous title.
Well, it depends how you mean by quicker. Like, I think that Smash is going to come out at the usual time that it would have come out, even if it was a new game. But I feel that's because of this early part of development is going to be a lot slower. So, I mean, so here's the thing that people have to remember about Smash, right? It was being made by Namco Bandai, and a combination of people from different teams, but the majority of the team was the same team that worked on Tekken.
Right.
And part of them obviously were still working on Tekken 7, the arcade unit, and part of them were working on Pokken at some point, must have been. But when 2014 finished, no, in fact, when 2014 ended, the team that was making Smash disbanded and left a tiny amount to do DLC. And I think most of that team went on to go and work on the Tekken 7 arcade and then now console port, as well as the Pokken arcade and console port. So I think that's because that's still going on. We have Tekken 7, the console version, got delayed and only just came out, and now there's a Pokken port also coming out, which has new content and stuff. And I think that's been taking up the team's time. The team that's been working on the Smash port is probably the same team that was also doing the DLC, if not like slightly more or slightly less than that. And so that's what I feel like happened. Like, I think they'd planned it to be a very short port to come out, and then Tekken got delayed, and then they decided to do a Pokken port. And because that ended up taking slightly more priority, they decided that Smash would be would be made into a proper game. So now that the Tekken 7 team is done with that, a small amount of people will be left on that, and they'll probably all be brought back onto Smash. That's what I'm thinking anyway.
That's actually a plausible theory. I really think that's something that could be happening internally. It kind of makes you wonder if the game or the port is having some developmental troubles, and I think that makes a lot of sense. That it could be having team issues or having numbers issues.
Yeah, well, I think team issues and just Nintendo's scheduling issues are a reason why it's now a full game. I think the port is dead. There is no port, but the assets could have been ported over, and they're now just turning it into a full-on game. I think because Nintendo clearly has a set time where they want to space, one brand new game a month. They want to keep this pacing, and they clearly had Smash could afford to be delayed essentially because Nintendo had other games to fill in that gap. They had Fire Emblem Warriors, Xenoblade, Mario and Rabbids, Mario Odyssey, and what have you. And so Smash didn't need to come out this year. And it could have come out next year, but maybe Nintendo feels like they're confident enough with their lineup for next year, with Yoshi, right, Kirby, and a proper Fire Emblem game, and possibly Pokemon and Metroid, that Smash also isn't needed then. So they can afford to put time away to make it proper, make it like a big title.
So Nantenjex, after all this discussion about Smash not showing up at E3. What do you think the future of the franchise is going to be on the Nintendo Switch?
Well, as we said before, I think it's a new game now, and I think for this one at the very least that Sakurai is probably going to come back for it. I think that because I think if it's based off of Smash 4, if he was helping out with that port in any kind of way, then if they're going to turn it into a new game, he's already involved in some capacity. So I think he would return as director. So it would probably just be going up from there. It's probably going to take out some sort of advantage from what the Switch has. It's going to look at the complaints people had of the Wii U version and try and address them. The advantage being that it's no longer making two games at once, meaning that they can double down on a lot of the single player stuff. We'll likely have more new stages than we got in each individual one. and characters like the Ice Climbers can potentially return. And I think we'll get better single-player content. Like, Classic Mode doesn't need to be this big, stupid 8-player battle royale. They can look at what people thought of the Classic Modes and make it like that, or they can make it a new version. They could bring back something equivalent to the Adventure Mode. I don't think they'll bring Subspace Emissary back, because I think that took up way too much development time. And like they even said with Brawl, it was practically like making 2 games at once. And they didn't like it in Brawl, and I think making 2 games at once with Smash 4 was slightly easier, but they were also two very similar games, I should say. And I don't think that. But they know that people want something like an Adventure Mode where you run around and beat up enemies. That was the point of Smash Run. So whether they expand on that, they make that a new mode, or something like that, I think that will come back. And I think more characters will get cut, obviously, but more characters will get added. We'll have more than 58 characters. I don't think we'll reach 100, but I'm going to say about 70 is probably the highest mark.
Yeah, I think when they start developing a game for the Switch, it's going to be different. And the reason why is because they're not going to really have the limitations of when they had to make other... I mean, there was always some crutch when they had to make a past Smash Bros. Game. If you look at 64, they had a low budget. Melee had a short development time. Brawl had the Subspace Emissary mode. And 3DS and Wii U was developed for both systems. So with the Switch, unless they don't do a huge mode, or unless they outsource that mode like they intended in Brawl, they're not really going to have any sort of catch when they develop that game. It's going to be more of, okay, we can focus more on the in-depth gameplay now, see what people want. And I think that's going to excite a lot of people, because they're actually going to focus on that. The reason why Brawl was so, I guess, janky, according to some people, was because of the Subspace Emissary. They were focused on 2 things at once, so they had to botch, I think, one thing. And the gameplay, considering it was too slow, that was one of the biggest complaints, and that was most likely due to the development time. For Smash 4, the single-player modes, arguably in the Wii U version, were more lackluster, so they focused more on the mechanics of the game, but for both versions. This time, if they have an adequate development schedule, if they have a huge budget, and they don't have to deal with any of those, I am actually excited to see what comes out of that.
Right, I'm going to go back to the point you just made there, because you're right, every Smash has had some kind of thing with it. Like, Smash 64 was the first game, and it was the experimental one. They didn't know how people were going to perceive it. It had a small team, had a small budget, so there was that. Melee had a quick development time, which is true. But the thing about Melee is that Smash 64 was the very basic one, the original one. Melee was designed on purpose to be a lot harder, a lot more, I guess you could argue, competitive focused. I mean, I don't think Sakurai ever intended it to be as competitive as it actually is now, but it was certainly designed with the fast-paced gameplay and for people who got used to the original Smash Brothers a lot.
Right.
That's what the Melee was designed for, with them in mind. And then, had a slightly smaller budget. But with with Brawl, it wasn't just Subspace Emissary is the reason why the game got delayed, and the team had a stressy out time. But I don't think Subspace Emissary impacted Brawl's gameplay and mechanics in any way. I think that's down to 2 factors. The first, that they had to get it working on the Wii, like with just the Wii remote. And the other factor is because the Wii was designed for a casual audience. It was the complete opposite. The GameCube was arguably a more hardcore audience, thus Smash was designed to be more hardcore. And Brawl was designed for the Wii, which was a more casual audience, therefore Smash for Brawl had to be more party than fighting. It had to be brought down a notch and made into this more casual-based thing. Which is one of the reasons why I think it was so jarring going from one game to another, and why Brawl feels so janky in comparison. And so that's why with the Wii U and 3DS version, they increased the speed and stuff like that. They still wanted it to be more of a party game for people, especially the Wii U one, which was considered more of a stadium style thing. But it was no longer for a super casual audience. And I think with the Switch, it's probably going to be more... I mean, it'll be similar to Smash 4 out of any of the games. It'll be similar to that, probably because it started off as a port, but probably. but I think it will be more in line with Melee than it would be with Brawl. Because with Smash 4, they were just coming off of that, and they'll now have all the complaints and stuff that from what people didn't like in Smash 4. But also, with Smash 4, they had to make everything in line with 3DS limitations, and that changed a lot of things.
Right.
And they no longer have that with the Switch version. It's like you said, the Switch version doesn't have any notable limitations. Unless Sakurai plans something like the Subspace Emissary and just dooms himself, the Switch, the only limitation I can think of is that the Switch also has to work in portable mode. It also has to work on the smaller screen, and it's going to have to work with just the Joy-Con. But it might also it might not be able to have the GameCube controller support. That's going to all be up to Nintendo.
Right.
But from a pure gameplay perspective, there is no specific audience that it needs to aim for, other than Smash fans. There's no limitations from the system itself, because even on portable mode, it's still strong enough. Anything that could happen on the Wii U version could probably happen on the portable as well. And if the game has already been ported, like if all the assets have already been ported to Switch, by the time the game enters full development, like that's already one massive step brought over. And I mean, a big thing that I know a lot of people were excited about if this was the case is that if everything gets ported over, all the characters, Sakurai has stated that he doesn't like cutting characters, and maybe he doesn't have to. The only reason I could see him cutting characters is for space issues. Like, he's commented that if you get a game with like 100 characters, it stops being like every character stops feeling special, and I do agree with him. And I think at some point in the future, in my guess, when a new director comes along, they'll probably bring the roster down a significant amount. I mean, it happens to every fighting game. It's going to happen to Smash eventually. I think when a new director comes along, that's the best time. But like, they might not have to do that. I think stages they're going to have to cut, obviously, but that's because it will get to the point where there are way too many stages, and I think everyone would rather have newer stages than the same stages being reused. But characters is entirely different. They don't need to cut characters. They can they can revamp characters. The clones can all be revamped in some sort of way, and heck, they can bring back the other missing characters. But I don't think there's a reason to cut characters unless there's technical problems, or if they don't want to waste time developing them.
Right, exactly. I mean, as you said, if the game is indeed ported to the Switch, they could... I mean, we've actually talked about this in our Discord server, and technically speaking, I think you and me kind of have the same mindset when it comes to the game. Like, we're thinking maybe a Splatoon, like, again, like we mentioned earlier, a Splatoon 2 kind of situation where the game is based on largely Smash 4 assets, and that could mean that they could just port... Instead of building the characters from the ground up, they could just take the characters from the Wii U version, adjust them to the new mechanics, and then just build upon that.
All right, and I think there are other things also to take into account with that, because it's not just a matter of characters. If they did port the whole game over, we could get the modes just, added in. We could get all like Master Orders and Crazy Orders could return easily. You can add more missions and stuff to it. You can make it slightly different, but the programming stuff is already there. Same for mission mode. Can come back. They could keep all the trophies, although I think they don't necessarily need to. The same goes for music. If they wanted to, though, they could keep all the music. The stage builder, if they figured out a way to make it on the Switch and work like it did on the Wii U, there's no reason to cut that. Smash Tour, maybe they'll cut just to avoid an over-saturation of modes, but they don't need to. And with Smash Run, we said about a potential adventure type mode coming back. If they've already made all these assets for a planned port of all, HD versions of all the enemy types, HD versions of that land and of the tile base, the tile set and stuff for the level, and all those 3D models, they could just revamp them into the adventure mode. Like, they can reuse all of that and cut down on stuff. Like, I'd rather the adventure mode obviously be based on actual locations, but at least the enemy AI is already done. Like, there was in Melee and then in Brawl used a lot of original characters for their adventure mode, and Melee you only really had a couple of stages that actually had running segments, and even then, of those stages, only like 2 of them actually had enemies, and that was the Zelda and Mario one. Now they could have a Kirby level, and all the Kirby enemies are already there with all the programming done. Kid Icarus level, same thing. Metroid level, Metroid has enemies in Smash Run, you could have the same thing going on there. It's like, with all this work already done, all they need to do is add on top of it and use it in ways that will make development easier for them, and thus we as fans can get more stuff. Because we know Sakurai he wants to try and add as much as possible for fans in each game. Obviously, there's limits to where he can take that, and he doesn't want to oversaturate things. But if he can get as many modes in as possible and in as quick as time as possible, he's definitely going to go for it.
Do you think that the Switch version they'll kind of dub as like the Ultimate Smash Brothers game? Like they could make it have like all the veterans come back with a couple new characters, and they can make it like this is the definitive Smash to own. Or
if they really are working from a port and they've really just brought every character back, they ported them all over and they decide not to cut any of them, then I could totally see that happening. All they need to do, because there's only 7 veterans missing, I think the number is. I mean, whether they bring them back or not is an entirely different thing, but I could see that happening. They could bring the 7 veterans back and then add another 12 characters in like they usually do. And you'd end up with about 77, 78 characters, let's say. Which is quite a lot. It is quite a lot. And I think it's pushing it around. But if they were really aiming for it to be the ultimate Smash Brothers, with every character included, I think that's like I could see them doing it. Although that is, of course, making because they're not as easy. They won't be easy to port from Brawl and Melee. They can't. They've lost the data for Young Link and Pichu, so they have to do it from scratch. That's kind of like making 20-something characters from the start again.
Yeah.
So maybe they won't. And of course, some of them, like Snake, they're gonna have to get rights for. I'm curious how the rights would work for the already existing guest characters. I mean, if they were working on a port, I would assume they already had it in the contract to keep all the guest characters. Like, all that, like when they started it just in case. But if it's gone from being a port to a new game, does that count and they can keep them all? Or does that not count and they have to renegotiate everything? Because, I mean, that's the only reason why I could see certain characters being cut. Because guest characters have harder ways of getting in, and I mean, Bandai Namco are working on the game, so I think Pac-Man's probably safe. But the rest of them are all going to need renegotiating.
I mean, apparently, our very own Push Justin released a video talking about the Smash Brothers Amiibo, and when that was revealed, and there was some speculation, a little bit of evidence that possibly they were all delayed due to rights with Cloud and Square Enix. I mean, they're always the ones that have rights issues.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I know I've heard things that might suggest something like that, like they had issues making Cloud amiibos, or Square did anyway. I mean, another thought for why the amiibo were delayed is that they were delayed to coincide with the port, and then when the port was decided to be made into a full game, Nintendo realized they couldn't just delay these amiibo another 2-something years, so just decided to release them randomly now.
Right.
Like, that's a... Because, I mean, if Cloud got delayed, yeah, sure, but why does that stop Bayonetta and Corrin from being released now? Like, well, being released back then? Like, why do they get punished just because Cloud does? Like,
maybe it was
Cloud's having a difficult
maybe
time.
it was just a strategic kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that's definitely a... We'll have to see how they do it with the other player twos, whether they do decide to make an Alpha amiibo or a female Robin amiibo. Or a male Wii Fit Trainer amiibo. We'll see if they announce them anytime soon, maybe not, or maybe they'll wait off for them and release them when the next Smash game comes. I'm curious how amiibo are going to factor into the new Smash game. I'm assuming they would do it, but would they remake, like, this is the Mario version 2 amiibo with the new Smash Brothers pose? Or would they just decide to use the old ones that they've already made? I'm hoping it's the latter, because I think they're just going to oversaturate if they re-release all the Smash Brothers amiibo again in a new pose.
Well, technically speaking,
it'd be ridiculous. But that's another topic for another day.
Yeah, that is. But you also did a past video about possibly Sakurai working on the new Kirby fighting game, and that was just a theory. But if that actually turns out to be like true, or if there's some weight to it, in your opinion, how do you think that would factor into a possibly new Smash game's development?
Well, I kind of hinted at this earlier, but so with Kid Icarus Uprising, right? Sakurai knew he was going to be working on Smash. The team had already started developing Smash 4 before Sakurai had finished Kid Icarus Uprising, but all they were doing was supporting stuff. They hadn't made any new characters. They hadn't made any new stages. Maybe they'd made one or some stages. It's hard to say. I mean, there's that picture from the 3DS version that uses the Brawl assets, the Brawl character models, but is also on the Punch-Out boxing arena. And so it's debated whether or not that came before Sakurai's project plan or after Sakurai's project plan. The new content would suggest after, but the fact that it's still using port data would suggest before. I mean, it's hard to fully figure this out. But what we do know is that they were working on Smash prior to him officially writing out the project plan and joining, while he was still working on Kid Icarus. And I think if it's support, I don't think Sakurai needed to be there as much as he would have done for a full game, which is why I think this one's slightly more different. If there was no port and they've just decided we're going to do Smash, and Sakurai's next project isn't Smash, then they're probably just porting it now, and development won't start until his new game comes out. So let's say it is Kirby Fighters, and his new game comes out at the end of this year in like October, November time. Game is out, game is released, Sakurai pretty much works on some quick things after the game's released, just in case there are any major bug issues and all that, and then takes like a 2-week break and moves over to Smash for Switch. So it would have already been ported over, but it would still use the Smash 4 framework, and it wouldn't start development properly until, let's say, assuming Kirby comes out in November, let's say that he doesn't start Smash until December. And what I mean is by he worked on the project plan, and then he works on the project plan in December, spends a year and a half making it. We probably wouldn't see it then until about summer of 2019 at the earliest.
All right,
because they were working on a port, I think that he left them a stuff. He left that they were clearly gonna. The port wasn't just gonna be a straight port. It was gonna have at least some new characters and stages. And so I think some development obviously has already been done, and the framework's already been made there. So there's some new content that's been done in a separate project plan, and the project plan's going to have to be rewritten. And if they decided to make it a new game now, like before this, Sakurai may have started working on the project plan already. Because if I believe back with the first two Smash Brothers, 64 and Melee, he made the project plans while working on other games. Like, he made the initial proposal for Smash 64 while working on Superstar, and while working on Kirby Bowling, I believe it was, or Kirby Air Ride, one of the two. He also made the Melee project plan then. But didn't actually start. So he may be writing the project plan now, but he doesn't enact it until he's ready to dive straight into, or at least doesn't dive fully into it until he's ready to be focused on that development. It's hard to say.
The one thing that I did want to say is, I do think at least we know that the data from Smash 4 is being used for something. I'm not trying to draw two conclusions, but Push Justin released an article earlier talking about the 1.1.6 patch. I'm not going to go into it that much. We're going to have the article linked into the description below, but the gist of it is there's debug files within that patch that could suggest, we're not trying to, I mean, it could be a stretch, but to suggest that maybe they're using the data for something, I definitely recommend it giving a read, but it's highly interesting. It goes to the inner workings of how these developers work on things, but
well, that's the big evidence that it's being ported. Like, it seems like they opened up the things again, which means they're willing to look into it, or that they were looking into adding more, essentially. But I mean, there could be other reasons. It's not conclusive proof, but that is the first proof that we had that yes, they are going to do this again for something. They are going to reuse all these assets again, or at least port them.
So, you have any final thoughts, or?
Yeah, just that we'll probably see it next year. I mean, it'd be weird to get it announced without a soft confirmation, but I don't think it's good. I don't think they'd delay Smash for a ridiculous amount of time. My current thoughts on timeline stuff is that we'll get an actual trailer for the game next year, and then it will come out in 2019. And it will be a brand new game, but I think aesthetically it will look very similar to Smash 4. It will look closer to Smash 4 than any other game.
Smash 4.75, people. It's happening. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Be sure to follow us on our social media pages, including our Facebook and Twitter accounts. Nantenjex, where can they find you at?
You can find me on this YouTube page, on this YouTube channel, Source Gaming. Subscribe and you can hear my lovely voice all the time. Or if you want to follow me on social media, it's at Mr. Nintendo. Or check out sourcegaming.info to see any of my written work and any of my Dream Smashers or articles looking at Smash speculation or stage design and other stuff like that. I've got a few Smash Brothers related stuff coming up, so look forward to it.
And you can find me on Twitter. It's EpicMartin7, the same name as in this video. You can find me on my YouTube page where I don't really do much. I also make articles featuring other people's content. I make retrospectives on the Game Boy Advance. Hoping to get part 3 out here soon, so that should be interesting. We also have a Patreon in general. We hope you guys check that out. You can support us. Pazzy just got out of E3 this year. And he has videos on the channel talking about it. We hope you guys check it out. We hope you guys enjoyed this video, and we will see you in the next one.
See you guys.